Be grateful I still feed you." He spat each word in front of the whole family before his fist connected with my jaw, right as the forks were still clinking against dinner plates. Blood trickled from the corner of my mouth. And that's when I saw it. A tiny red dot blinking on the smoke detector above a camera. If he liked recording his power, then I'd show it to the whole world. My name is Harper Quinn, and I'm 28 years old. I never thought I'd be back in this house, sitting at this dinner table, watching my stepfather perform his weekly ritual of control. But here I was, having returned 6 months ago to help care for my grandmother after her hip surgery, temporarily living in my childhood prison. Every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. sharp, Randall Pierce demanded we gather for what he called gratitude dinner. The dining room smelled of pot roast and submission, the overhead light casting harsh shadows across his weathered face. My mother, Lorna, sat to his right, her hands folded neatly in her lap like a child awaiting permission. My half-sister Madison, barely 20, hunched across from me. Her phone surrendered to the wooden tray Randall kept by the kitchen entrance, another one of his rules. "Let us begin with our gratitudes," Randall announced, his voice carrying that familiar edge of barely contained violence. He was 45, built like a linebacker gone to seed, with calloused hands from his auto repair shop and eyes that never quite looked at you. They looked through you, calculating your worth. "I'm grateful for the food on our table," Mother whispered, her voice paper-thin. "I'm grateful for having a roof over my head," Madison mumbled, staring at her empty plate. Randall's gaze settled on me. The fluorescent kitchen light behind him flickered, and I noticed how his jaw muscle twitched the warning sign I'd learned to read years ago. "Harper." His tone dropped an octave. "Your gratitude." I should have played along, should have mumbled something placating and gotten through another Sunday. But I was tired of watching him control my mother's bank cards, tired of seeing Madison flinch at his footsteps, tired of this house that reeked of fear disguised as discipline. "I'm grateful my grandmother's surgery went well," I said evenly. "And I'm grateful I have my own job at Northbridge Logistics, my own income, so I don't have to beg for gas money like Mom does." The room went arctic. Mother's sharp intake of breath cut through the silence. Madison's knuckles went white as she gripped the table edge. "What did you say?" Randall's chair scraped against the hardwood as he stood slowly, deliberately. "You heard me. You keep her cards, make her ask permission to buy groceries. That's not providing. Randall, that's—" The backhand came first, snapping my head to the side. The metallic taste of blood flooded my mouth. Before I could recover, his closed fist followed, connecting with my jaw with a crack that seemed to echo off the walls. The force knocked me sideways in my chair, and I caught myself on the table, sending Madison's water glass tumbling. "Be grateful I still feed you," he roared, spittle flying. "This is my house, my rules. You don't like it. You can get out." My ears rang. Warm blood dripped from my split lip onto the white tablecloth, spreading like watercolor paint. Through the haze of pain, I heard my mother's weak protest. "Randall, please," and Madison's quiet sobbing. I lifted my head, jaw throbbing, prepared to meet his rage with my own. But as my gaze traveled upward, past his red face, past his pointing finger, something else caught my attention. There, mounted on the ceiling where a smoke detector should be, was indeed a smoke detector. But something was off. A tiny red LED light blinked steadily in its center, not the occasional green flash of a normal detector, but a continuous red pulse. Recording. 1 second. 2 seconds. The realization crashed over me like ice water. He'd been recording us. Recording everything. Randall was still ranting about respect and gratitude, but his words became white noise. My mind raced, cataloging every smoke detector in the house, every odd angle of the wall clocks, every strategic placement of the carbon monoxide detectors he'd insisted on installing, for our safety. Are you listening to me? He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him, his fingers digging into the bruise already forming. Yes, I whispered, tasting copper. I hear you. But what I really heard was opportunity. If Randall Pierce liked to document his kingdom of control, then I'd make sure the whole world saw exactly what kind of king he was. He released me with a shove and returned to his seat, cutting into his pot roast as if nothing had happened. Mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. Madison hadn't touched her food. I picked up my fork with a trembling hand, my jaw screaming with each tiny movement. But beneath the pain, beneath the humiliation, something else was building. Revenge, served at exactly the right temperature. The history of our family's silence began 3 years ago when my mother lost her job at the medical billing company. She'd been there 15 years, but corporate downsizing doesn't care about loyalty. Within 2 months, the savings evaporated. The mortgage payments fell behind. That's when Randall Pierce appeared like a savior wrapped in flannel and false promises. He owned RP Auto Repair on the north side of Flagstaff, a modest shop that somehow generated enough income for him to flash cash when it mattered. He met my mother at church, of course he did. Where else do predators hunt for the vulnerable but among the faithful seeking hope? Lorna, you don't need to struggle alone, he'd said, holding her hand in the church parking lot while autumn leaves swirled around them. I remember watching from my car, having driven up from Phoenix for the weekend, seeing how she melted into his attention like she'd been starving for it. The courtship was swift and calculated. Flowers every Tuesday, fixing her car for free, paying off 2 months of her mortgage to prove his intentions were serious. Within 6 months, they were married in a small ceremony that felt more like a contract signing than a celebration. Madison, 17 then, stood as maid of honor with eyes that already knew something was wrong. The rules started small. Just until you get back on your feet, Randall would say, taking my mother's debit card. I'll handle the finances so you can focus on finding work. But the job search became supervised. Her interview clothes needed his approval. The car keys migrated to his key ring because we should coordinate our schedules better. I watched it happen from a distance, driving up from Phoenix every few weeks for tense dinners where Randall's presence sucked the oxygen from every room. He never hit anyone those first months he didn't need to. The threat lived in his shoulders, in the way he'd grip his beer bottle until his knuckles went white, in how he'd slam cabinets just hard enough to make everyone jump. Harper doesn't understand because she wasn't here. My mother would defend him when I'd pull her aside. Randall saved us. We'd be homeless without him. You should be more grateful. That word, grateful. It became the family motto, printed on an invisible banner that hung over every interaction. Be grateful for the food. Be grateful for the roof. Be grateful he doesn't drink more. Be grateful he only yells. The physical violence started 14 months in. Madison had stayed out past 9 p.m. at a study group without calling. When she walked through the door at 9:20, Randall backhanded her so hard she hit the wall. My mother stood frozen in the doorway, dish towel in hand, as he explained that discipline is love. That's when the real rules emerged. Phones in the tray during dinner, internet shut off at 10 p.m. sharp. No visitors without 48 hours notice. Church every Sunday, where Randall served as a deacon and spoke about the importance of traditional family values, while we sat in the front pew like props in his performance. I tried to get them out. Drove up one weekend with apartment listings, job opportunities for my mother, a plan. But Randall had installed security cameras by then, for our protection, he said, and somehow knew I was coming before I even pulled into the driveway. The fight that followed left my mother in tears. Madison locked in her room, and Randall standing in the doorway as I left, smiling like he'd won a game I didn't know we were playing. So I retreated. Took a job with a logistics company in Phoenix. Convinced myself that distance was self-preservation. I sent money when I could. Called when Randall wasn't home. Tried to maintain some thread of connection. But guilt is a peculiar poison. It eats at you slowly, especially when your baby sister texts at 2 a. with, "I'm scared, and you're 200 miles away." Then Grandma fell, broke her hip in 3 places trying to reach something from a high shelf. She needed surgery, months of recovery, someone to help with her medications and physical therapy. And suddenly, I had a reason to come back that even Randall couldn't dispute. Family obligation, the one card that trumped his control. "It's temporary," I told myself, packing up my Phoenix apartment. Just until Grandma's mobile again. But 6 months in, living in my childhood room with its faded lavender walls, I realized temporary was a luxury we couldn't afford anymore. The bruises on Madison's arms were getting harder to hide. My mother had lost 30 pounds and most of her spirit, and Randall had gotten comfortable, confident in his kingdom of surveillance and fear. He didn't know I'd spent 4 years in the Army Reserve as a medical equipment technician. Didn't know I understood electronics, networks, how devices talk to each other. He thought those cameras made him omnipotent. He thought wrong. That night, I lay in bed until 2:15 a.m., listening to the house settle into its familiar pattern of sleep. Randall's snoring rumbled through the thin walls. 3 beers with dinner guaranteed he'd be out until his 5:30 alarm. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my penlight from the medical kit I kept for Grandma, and began my investigation. The smoke detector in my room came first. Standing on my desk chair, I examined it closely with the penlight between my teeth. The red LED blinked every 5 seconds, but there barely visible was a tiny glass eye next to it, a pinhole camera lens. My stomach turned as I thought about how many times I'd changed clothes directly beneath it. Moving systematically through the house, I cataloged everything: the hallway smoke detector camera, the carbon monoxide detector in the living room camera, the wall clock in the kitchen positioned perfectly to capture the dinner table camera. Even the seemingly innocent outlet adapter in the bathroom had a lens so small I almost missed it. 13 cameras total. The bastard had turned our home into his personal surveillance state. Back in my room, I pulled out my laptop and the portable Wi-Fi hotspot I used for work, separate from the house network Randall controlled, with the skills I'd picked up from Army communications training. I scanned for hidden networks. There it was, RP Home, password protected but broadcasting strong. His secret network for his secret cameras. The next morning at breakfast, Randall proved exactly what he was doing with all that footage. "Harper," he said, setting down his coffee with deliberate slowness, "would you like to see how disrespectful you looked last night?" Before anyone could respond, he pulled out his phone and connected it to the living room TV. There I was in high definition. You keep her cards, make her ask permission to buy groceries. The video even captured the blood dripping onto the tablecloth after he hit me. Madison went pale. Mother stared at her eggs. And Randall smiled, satisfied with our horror. "This is what ungrateful looks like," he announced. "This is what happens when someone forgets their place in this family. I keep these as reminders, as lessons." He had folders, organized by date. Dozens of them. "How long?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Since the beginning," he said simply. "Documentation is important in maintaining household discipline. Your mother understands this, don't you? Lorna." My mother nodded without looking up, and I realized with crystal clarity that she knew. She'd known about the cameras all along. That night, I waited until 3:45 a.m. Randall had gone to bed early after downing half a bottle of whiskey, a Sunday tradition when the Cowboys won. I could hear his unconscious rumbling from the master bedroom as I stood on the kitchen counter, carefully unscrewing the smoke detector. The device was heavier than expected. A commercial-grade unit with a micro SD card slot hidden behind the battery compartment. With steady hands, I removed the 64 GB card and replaced it with an identical one I'd bought at Walmart that afternoon. The swap took less than 30 seconds. Back in my room, I inserted the card into my laptop, my hands shaking with rage and anticipation. The folders were organized obsessively. Kitchen 2023, Harper Room 2023, Master Bedroom 2023. My cursor hovered over that last one before revulsion won out. There were some things I didn't need to see. Instead, I opened Dining Room 2024, dozens of files, each labeled with dates and times. I clicked on one from 2 months ago. There was Madison doing homework at the table when Randall walked in, grabbed her by the hair, and slammed her face into her textbook because she'd gotten a B on a test. The audio was clear enough to hear her crying, begging him to stop. Another video, Randall shoving my mother against the wall, his hand around her throat, because she'd bought the wrong brand of beer. "You're lucky I don't throw you out on the street," he snarled into the camera he didn't know was recording his confession. File after file, beating after beating, all meticulously recorded by his own system. He thought he was documenting our failures, our need for his discipline. So, instead, he'd created evidence of systematic abuse, dated and time-stamped, with perfect audio and video quality. I copied everything to 3 separate external drives. My military training kicking in always have backups of backups. One drive would go to a safety deposit box tomorrow. One would stay hidden in Grandma's room where Randall never went. The third would be my working copy. As the files transferred, I found something else. A folder labeled Church Finances. Inside were spreadsheets showing deposits from the church's building fund into something called RP Management LLC, which then transferred money directly to his auto shop account. The godly deacon was embezzling from his own congregation. By 5 a.m., I had everything. Years of abuse, financial fraud, enough evidence to destroy Randall Pierce completely. But I needed more than evidence. I needed a plan, allies, and most importantly, I needed to ensure my mother and Madison would be safe when this bomb went off. I slipped the original SD card back into the smoke detector just as Randall's alarm went off down the hall. As his footsteps headed toward the bathroom, I allowed myself a small smile. He liked to record everything. Good, because soon, everyone would be watching. Tuesday afternoon, I drove to the Flagstaff Public Library, where Jace Alvarez worked as their IT specialist. We'd gone to high school together, and more importantly, he'd testified in his sister's domestic violence case 2 years ago. If anyone would understand what I needed, it would be him. I found him in the basement server room, untangling Ethernet cables with the focused patience of someone who solved puzzles for both work and pleasure. His face brightened when he saw me, then immediately darkened when he noticed the fading bruise along my jaw despite my concealer. "Harper Jesus, what happened to you?" "I need your help, Jace. It's complicated." I pulled out the external drive. "And I need someone I can trust." We sat in his cramped office as I explained everything: the cameras, the abuse, the evidence I'd collected. His expression shifted from shock to anger to determination as he clicked through the files, his jaw clenching at the particularly brutal videos. "The metadata is all here," he said, pulling up the file properties, timestamps, device information, even the MAC addresses of the cameras. "This is admissible evidence, Harper, but we need to preserve the chain of custody properly." He helped me create hash values for each file, generating digital fingerprints that would prove the videos hadn't been tampered with. Then he noticed something I'd missed: the cameras were uploading to a cloud storage service as well. "He's got backups online," Jace explained, tracing the network activity. "Even if he deletes the local files, they're stored on a remote server. We can subpoena those records if needed. Can you help me recover any deleted files from the card?" "Already on it." His fingers flew across the keyboard, running recovery software. Harper, there's 2 years of deleted content here. He's been doing this since before they got married." My stomach churned as more files appeared: videos of my mother from when they were dating, filmed without her knowledge. Private moments turned into his personal collection. "I'm making you a complete archive," Jace said quietly. "Everything recovered, everything hashed, everything documented. What's your plan?" "I need to protect my family first. Then I'm going to destroy him." That afternoon, I visited the Northern Arizona Family Safety Center, a nondescript building tucked behind a medical complex. The intake counselor, a woman named Rita with kind eyes and steady hands, listened as I laid out the situation. "The cameras complicate things," she said, taking careful notes. "But they're also your strongest evidence. We can help you file for emergency protective orders for all three of you. The financial abuse against your mother, the physical violence, the surveillance without consent, these are all serious crimes." She helped me photograph my injuries properly, using their specialized camera that captured details my phone would miss. Each bruise was documented, measured, described in clinical detail that transformed my pain into evidence. "Your sister is 20, so she can file her own order. Your mother?" Rita paused. "She has to want to leave. Harper, we can't force her." "I know, but if I can show her there's a way out. Maybe—" Rita handed me a folder thick with resources: emergency housing, legal aid, counseling services. "Document everything. Keep copies in multiple locations. And Harper, have a go bag ready for each of you. Cash, documents, medications. When you make your move, you'll need to move fast." Later that evening, while Randall was at his shop, I carefully approached Madison in her room. She was studying for her community college exam, textbooks spread across her bed. When I showed her a single video, just one, of Randall hitting her, she broke down completely. "I thought I was going crazy," she sobbed. "He always said it was my fault, that I made him do it. It was never your fault. None of this is—" I held her as she cried. "I'm going to get us out, Madison, all of us. But I need you to be strong a little longer." I gave her a burner phone I'd bought with cash, programmed with only essential numbers. "Hide this. If anything happens, if you feel unsafe, you call Rita at the safety center. Don't wait for me." The hardest conversation was with my mother. I found her alone in the garden at 6:30 p.m., tending to roses that never seemed to bloom quite right in the high desert air. When I showed her the spreadsheet of embezzled church funds, her hands stilled on the pruning shears. "He's stealing from the church, Mom, from your friends, from people who trust him." "You don't understand," she whispered. "If I leave, he'll ruin me. He said he has videos of private things. He'll show everyone. Mom, I have those videos. All of them. He can't hurt you with them if we act first." I took her dirt-stained hand. "We can do this. There's a shelter, lawyers who will help for free, a whole system ready to protect us, but you have to be willing to leave." She pulled her hand away, returning to her roses. "The church fundraiser dinner is this Saturday. He's giving a speech about the importance of family values." "Mom, I'm just telling you," she said, cutting a dead bloom with precise anger. "That Saturday, the entire congregation will be in one place, with their phones and the church's new projection system for the live stream." Our eyes met across the thorny bushes, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw a spark of the woman who'd raised me alone before Randall came into our lives. "Saturday," I repeated. "Saturday." The Flagstaff Community Church's annual fundraising dinner was their biggest event of the year. 300 tickets sold at $75 each, with proceeds supposedly going toward the new youth center. Randall, as deacon and finance committee chair, would be running the silent auction and delivering the keynote speech about building strong families through faith and discipline. Thursday night, Jace and I met at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town to finalize our plan. Over coffee that grew cold while we worked, we mapped out every technical detail on napkins that we'd burn later. "The church upgraded their AV system last month," Jace explained, sketching a diagram. "Everything runs through a central media computer in the sound booth. I installed it myself as a volunteer project. Can you access it remotely? Better, I still have the administrator credentials. I can schedule content to play automatically at specific times." He pulled up the church's Facebook page on his phone. "They're live streaming the whole dinner. Whatever plays on the projection system goes out to the internet simultaneously." "What about backup plans if someone pulls the plug?" Jace smiled grimly. "That's the beauty of modern technology. The stream runs through 3 redundant systems. Even if they kill the main projector, the live stream continues to Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. Plus, I'm setting up a parallel stream to the Neighborhood Association's page completely independent system. We created a custom video file, edited with surgical precision. 5 minutes of Randall's greatest hits, him punching Madison, choking my mother, the clear audio of his threats and degradation. Jace overlaid the financial records showing the embezzlement, with arrows pointing to each fraudulent transaction. The timestamp data appeared in the corner of each clip, irrefutable proof of when these crimes occurred. We'll embed it in the presentation schedule between the opening prayer and his speech. Jace said, 7:45 p.m. Exactly. The room will be full. Everyone seated. No way to stop it without causing a bigger scene. Friday afternoon, I approached Pastor Eleanor Mitchell during her office hours. She was 62, had been with the church for 8 years, and had always struck me as someone who valued truth over comfortable lies. I showed her just one 30-second clip, Randall hitting my mother while wearing his deacon's pin. Her face went ashen. How long has this been happening? 3 years, and there's more. Financial irregularities with the building fund. Pastor Eleanor closed her eyes, pressing her fingers to her temples. I've had concerns about the accounting discrepancies, but Randall always had explanations. She looked at me sharply. What are you planning? To show the truth during tomorrow's dinner, during his speech about family values. This will destroy the fundraiser. Scandal could hurt the church's reputation for years. Respectfully, Pastor, he's already destroying your church. He's stealing from it while preaching about virtue. How many other families in your congregation are hiding abuse because men like Randall make them think it's godly discipline? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the cross on her wall. I won't stop you, but I can't openly help either. I'm not asking you to. Just, when it happens, don't let anyone turn it off. Let the truth finish speaking. That evening, I texted my mother from the burner phone. Tomorrow night, I'm giving you your freedom. Be ready to leave immediately after. Pack light. Essentials only. Her response came an hour later. Madison and I will be ready. Thank you. Saturday arrived with clear skies and unseasonable warmth for October. I spent the morning at the bank, withdrawing cash and securing copies of important documents in a safety deposit box. The go bags were in my car trunk, 3 backpacks with clothes, medications, copies of IDs, and enough cash to survive 2 weeks. At 5 p.m., we arrived at the church as a family. Randall wore his best suit, the one that made him look like a respectable businessman instead of what he really was. He glad-handed through the crowd, accepting praise for his wonderful work with the building fund. My mother smiled robotically beside him while Madison and I hung back, playing our parts as the grateful family. The fellowship hall was decorated with white tablecloths and centerpieces of artificial autumn leaves. The projection screens, 2 massive displays flanking the podium, showed a loop of church activities and donation thermometers. I spotted Jace in the sound booth, giving me the slightest nod. By 7:30 p.m., all 300 guests were seated at their round tables, finishing their catered barbecue dinners. Randall sat at the head table with the other church board members, checking his note cards one final time. He'd practiced his speech about family values all week, never knowing it would become his confession. I checked my phone 7:40 p.m. 5 minutes until the truth would set us free. I reached under the table and squeezed Madison's hand. She squeezed back, her palm sweaty but grip firm. On my other side, my mother clutched her purse packed with everything she couldn't bear to leave behind. 7:43 p.m. Pastor Eleanor stood to deliver the opening prayer. The room bowed their heads. 7:44 p.m. Amen echoed through the hall. 7:45 p.m. The screens flickered, and Randall Pierce's carefully constructed world began to burn. The screens went black for a heartbeat. Then Randall's voice filled the fellowship hall, crystal clear through the sound system. Be grateful I still feed you. The video opened with the dinner scene from last Sunday. There was Randall in high definition, his fist connecting with my jaw, blood dripping onto the white tablecloth. The timestamp glowed in the corner, October 6th, 2024, 7:18 p.m. 300 people sat frozen, forks halfway to mouths, as they watched their deacon beat his stepdaughter at the dinner table. What the hell? Randall shot up from his seat, his chair crashing backward. But the video continued. The next clip, Randall slamming Madison's face into her textbook. B students don't deserve dinner. The timestamp, August 15th, 2024, 8:32 p.m. Madison's sob echoed through the speakers, and several people in the audience gasped. "Turn it off!" Randall roared, rushing toward the sound booth. "Turn it off now!" 2 men from the board tried to follow him, but the narrow aisle between tables slowed their progress. On screen, another scene. Randall's hand around my mother's throat, shoving her against the kitchen wall. "You stupid woman! Can't even buy the right beer!" September 3rd, 2024, 9:47 p.m. The crowd erupted. Chairs scraped against the floor as people stood. Phones emerged from pockets and purses, their cameras pointed at the screens. The livestream viewer count climbed 50, 100, 200 viewers and rising. Then the financial records appeared, Jace's careful editing making them impossible to misunderstand. Arrows pointed from the church building fund to RP Management LLC to Randall's personal account. $47,000 over 2 years. Lies. Randall reached the sound booth door, yanking on the handle. Jace had locked it from inside. "This is fabricated deep fakes." But his own voice contradicted him as the next clip played. There he was, sitting at his home computer, transferring funds while muttering, "They'll never check. Faithful sheep never question the shepherd." June 12, 2024, 11:14 p. Pastor Eleanor stood at the podium, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Everyone, please remain calm. I've called the police." That word police sent Randall into pure panic. He spun from the sound booth and charged toward the projection equipment. Grabbing the HDMI cable, he ripped it from the projector. The main screen went dark, but the second screen continued playing. The live stream continued broadcasting. Phones throughout the room continued recording. "It's still streaming," someone shouted, holding up their phone showing the Facebook feed. 800 viewers. The next clip was the worst one, Randall beating my mother with his belt while she cowered on their bedroom floor, begging him to stop. "This is what ungrateful wives get," he snarled. January 18th, 2024, 10:26 p.m. Women throughout the congregation were crying. Men stood with clenched fists, several moving to block the exits as if sensing Randall might run. But he wasn't running. He was advancing on our table, his face purple with rage. "You did this." He pointed at me, spittle flying. "You ungrateful little Randall Pierce, step back." Pastor Eleanor's voice held an authority I'd never heard before. She stood between him and our table, all 5'4" of her, staring him down. "The police are on their way. This is my family, my business." "No," my mother said, standing slowly. Her voice was quiet, but carried through the stunned silence. "We're not your family. We're your victims." The video had reached its final segment, a montage of bruises, tears, fear, all dated and documented. Then the screen displayed a simple message. "Domestic violence is not discipline. Theft is not leadership. If you need help, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline." The sound of sirens grew closer. Randall looked around wildly, perhaps finally understanding that his kingdom had fallen. He made one last desperate move, lunging toward my mother's purse where he knew she kept her phone, probably planning to destroy evidence he thought was there. Madison moved faster than I'd ever seen her move, sweeping Mom's purse out of reach while 3 men from the congregation grabbed Randall's arms, holding him in place. "Don't touch him more than necessary," Pastor Eleanor instructed calmly. "We're not him." The fellowship hall doors opened. 4 officers entered, hands on their service weapons but not drawn. The lead officer, a woman with sergeant stripes, surveyed the scene, Randall being restrained by parishioners, 300 witnesses, and video evidence still playing on loop on the second screen. "Randall Pierce," she asked. "This is a setup. They're lying. I'm being framed." I stood, pulling out the flash drive. "Officer, I have video evidence of domestic violence and financial fraud. Everything is documented and preserved with chain of custody." Jace emerged from the sound booth with his laptop. "I have the technical documentation proving the authenticity of all files. Officer, no alterations. All original metadata intact." The sergeant nodded to her officers. "Randall Pierce, you're under arrest for domestic violence, assault, and suspicion of embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed him, Randall's mask finally slipped completely. He thrashed against the restraints, screaming obscenities, threatening to destroy us all. The congregation watched in horrified silence as the man who'd preached about family values revealed his true nature. "Record this too," I said loudly, and dozens of phones turned toward him. "Let everyone see who he really is." They dragged him out as he spat and cursed, his carefully crafted reputation destroyed in exactly 8 minutes of truth. The fellowship hall felt like a crime scene after the police left with Randall. People stood in clusters, speaking in hushed voices, some still recording on their phones, others comforting each other. The projection screens had gone dark, but the evidence lingered in everyone's minds. The sergeant, Officer Patricia Reeves, took my statement at one of the round tables while crime scene technicians photographed my still visible bruises under proper lighting. I handed over the flash drive, the external hard drives, and Jace's technical documentation. "This is the most comprehensive evidence package I've seen in a domestic violence case," Sergeant Reeves said, sealing each item in evidence bags. "Most victims don't have this level of proof." "He provided it himself," I said. "He just never thought we'd use his own weapons against him." Jace sat at the next table, walking another officer through the technical aspects: MAC addresses, metadata, digital fingerprints. His laptop screen showed the chain of custody documentation he'd meticulously created. "The cloud backups are hosted on a server in California," he explained. "We'll need a warrant, but those files will corroborate everything on these physical drives." My mother was giving her statement to a female officer near the kitchen. For the first time in 3 years, she sat up straight, shoulders back, speaking clearly. Madison sat beside her, holding her hand, occasionally adding her own experiences to the record. "Mrs. Pierce, sorry. Ms. Quinn," the officer corrected herself. "We'll need you to sign this emergency protective order. It goes into effect immediately. Mr. Pierce cannot come within 500 feet of you, your daughters, or your mother-in-law." "What about the house?" my mother asked. "It's in your name from before the marriage, correct? Then it's yours. We'll have an officer accompany you to change the locks tonight." Pastor Eleanor approached our table, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. "Harper, I need to apologize. There were signs I chose not to see. Comments from other women in the congregation that I dismissed as marital troubles. You couldn't have known the extent of it. But I should have looked harder." She pulled out a church checkbook. "The board held an emergency vote. We're filing charges for the embezzlement, and we're making an immediate donation to the Family Safety Center in your family's name." Across the room, someone had started cleaning up the overturned chairs, trying to restore order to chaos. But I noticed something else: women approaching my mother, some crying, others whispering their own stories. One pulled up her sleeve to show faded bruises. Another admitted her husband controlled their finances, too. "Ma'am," a younger officer appeared at my elbow. "We've been to the house, found the cameras, 13 devices, just like you documented. That's felony unlawful surveillance. Adding that to the domestic violence and embezzlement charges, he's looking at serious time." My phone buzzed with notifications. The live stream video had been shared over 3,000 times. Comments poured in support, shock, praise for our courage. Someone had already started a GoFundMe for my mother that had raised $2,000 in an hour. But then Randall made one last desperate play. As they were processing him at the station, he'd managed to call his brother from jail, a call that was immediately relayed to us by the police. "He's claiming you planted the cameras," Sergeant Reeves informed us. "Says you recorded the videos to frame him." I almost laughed. "Check the purchase records. He bought them with his credit card. The MAC addresses are registered to his email account. His fingerprints are all over them." "We know. His brother is bringing a lawyer, though, James Morrison from Morrison and Associates." My mother's face paled. Morrison was known for getting guilty men reduced sentences, for finding technicalities, for making victims look like perpetrators. But this time was different. "Good," I said. "Let him bring his lawyer." I pulled out my personal laptop and showed the sergeant one more thing I'd found Randall's secret email account where he'd sent some videos to himself with subject lines like "Lesson for Ungrateful Wife" and "Madison Learns Respect." His own emails, his own account, his own digital signature. He documented his crimes and titled them, the sergeant said in disbelief. Abusers often do. They're proud of their control. I closed the laptop. Will that be enough? More than enough. With this evidence, even Morrison can't spin it. It was nearly 11 p.m. when we were finally released to go home our home. Without Randall. The locksmith met us there, a kind man who worked in silence, understanding the weight of the moment. As he changed each lock, it felt like breaking chains. Madison found where Randall had hidden his surveillance equipment hub in the basement a sophisticated setup that must have cost thousands. We didn't touch it, leaving it for the police to collect as evidence, but seeing it made everything more real. "How long until trial?" My mother asked Sergeant Reeves during her final check-in. "With this much evidence, the DA will push for a plea deal. He'll likely take it to avoid a trial where all this becomes public record. 8 to 12 years is my guess, with the financial crimes adding to the domestic violence charges." My mother signed the formal statement, her signature firm and clear. "I want to be notified of every hearing, every decision, every parole board meeting." "You will be. You all will be." As the last police car pulled away, we stood in our kitchen, the same kitchen where so much violence had happened. But it felt different now. Lighter. Free. Madison pulled the dinner tray from the counter, the one where we'd been forced to surrender our phones every meal. She walked to the back door, opened it, and hurled the tray into the darkness. We heard it crash against something in the yard. "No more rules," she said quietly. "No more fear." My mother added, "I thought about the camera SD card still hidden in my room, the backup of backups, just in case. Because men like Randall don't give up easily, even from prison. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, we would sleep in a house without him. The house felt strange without the red lights blinking from the cameras. Strange, but good. Like waking up from a nightmare and slowly remembering what peace felt like. The church parking lot was nearly empty by midnight, just a few cars belonging to the cleanup crew who'd volunteered to stay. I stood under the amber sodium light near the entrance, my jaw still throbbing but my spirit somehow weightless. The October air carried the smell of rain coming in from the mountains. Pastor Eleanor emerged from the fellowship hall, locking the door behind her. She walked over to me, carrying a manila folder. "Harper," she said, handing me the folder. "This is a copy of our formal complaint to the police about the embezzlement. And this," she pulled out a business card, "is my personal cell. If you or your family need anything at all, you call me. Thank you, Pastor. No, thank you. You've shown more courage tonight than I've seen in 40 years of ministry." She paused, looking back at the church. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is refusing to be silent about sin, especially when it wears a suit and quotes scripture. As her car pulled away, I felt my phone vibrate. A text from Madison, already home with Mom. "We took down all the family photos with him in them. Mom's actually smiling." I drove home slowly, taking the long way through downtown Flagstaff. The streets were quiet. Most businesses dark except for the 24-hour gas stations and a lone diner. At a red light, I deleted the RP home network from my phone's saved connections, erasing the last digital trace of his surveillance system. When I pulled into our driveway at 12:45 a.m., every light in the house was on, not from fear this time, but from freedom. Through the kitchen window, I could see Mom and Madison at the table not for a forced gratitude dinner, but sharing hot chocolate and talking, really talking, for the first time in years. I opened my phone one more time and deleted the recording app I'd installed as a precaution. We didn't need to document anything anymore. The performance was over. Inside, the house smelled different. Mom was burning a vanilla candle, something Randall had forbidden because he hated the scent. Madison had music playing from her phone, another broken rule. The kitchen table had been moved to a different angle, breaking the sight lines he'd carefully established for his cameras. "The detective called," Mom said as I joined them. "Randall took the plea deal. 8 years federal for the embezzlement, 5 years state for domestic violence and surveillance, to run concurrently. With good behavior, he'll serve at least 6 years. 6 years, Madison repeated, as if tasting the words. I'll be 26 when he might get out. I'll have graduated, started my life. We all will have, Mom added. She reached for both our hands. I know I should have protected you both. I should have been stronger. You survived. I interrupted. We all survived. That took its own kind of strength. We sat in comfortable silence, no longer waiting for heavy footsteps, no longer tensing at every sound. Somewhere in the darkness beyond our windows, Randall Pierce sat in a county jail cell, his kingdom of surveillance and control reduced to a concrete box. His cameras could no longer see us. His rules no longer bound us. At 2 a.m., we finally headed to bed. As I passed the spot where the hallway smoke detector used to be, I saw the small hole in the ceiling where it had been mounted. Tomorrow, we'd patch it, paint over it, erase the last physical reminder of his watching eyes. But tonight, I left it alone. A small wound in the drywall that would heal with time, just like us. I stood in my room, looking up at the ceiling where the camera had watched me for 2 years. The red light was gone, replaced by nothing but white paint and shadows. For the first time since returning home, I changed clothes without checking angles, without hiding behind the closet door, without fear. My phone buzzed with one final notification. The live stream video had reached 50,000 views. Comments poured in from other survivors, other families who recognized their own stories in ours. Someone had started a hashtag, "No More Silent Dinners." I thought about responding, about becoming some kind of advocate or spokesperson, maybe someday. But tonight, I just wanted to sleep in a house without cameras, in a room without surveillance, in a family without fear. Madison knocked softly on my door. Harper, Mom wanted me to tell you something. She said thank you for seeing what she couldn't, for being brave when she wasn't, for saving us all. We saved each other, I said, and we had. In the end, Randall's own need to document his control became the evidence of his crimes. Every camera meant to imprison us became a witness against him. Every recording meant to humiliate us became testimony of our survival. I opened my laptop one last time and logged into the cloud storage account where I'd backed up everything. With a few clicks, I transferred ownership to Sergeant Reeves and the district attorney's office. Then I deleted my access, closing that chapter permanently. The house was quiet now, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Not the suffocating silence of fear, but the peaceful quiet of safety. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, victim services, probably reporters. We'd have to figure out how to pay bills without Randall's income, how to heal from years of trauma, how to rebuild our lives. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, we were free. The red lights were gone. The cameras were dead. The recordings were evidence. And we were still here, still standing, still breathing in a house that was finally, truly, completely ours. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your support means everything. And remember, sometimes the greatest revenge is simply revealing the truth.